Hey everybody, how you doing, Jack?
Hello.
Very good, thank you, Andrew. How are you? How are you, Michael?
How you doing,
Good,
Michael?
thank you. Good, thank you.
Cool. So yes, people are starting to come in. So welcome everybody. Let us know where you're watching from. Don't be shy. Let us know in the comments underneath these live videos everywhere. We're live in Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, the land of social media, social networks.
And just remember, if you happen to not be a photographer or an artist, that doesn't mean that you can't make comments about what you see, and
Sure.
ask questions.
We got Kim from Arizona.
Yay, Kim Kempton. She's one of my Facebook friends.
We got Arizona in the house because we also have Maria from Tucson, Arizona. Yeah.
She just happens to be my wife.
Ah.
Hi, Maria.
Good. Your wife and your fan.
Yes. She's
cool.
Yeah. You need your wife's support to do what I do.
Yeah, good. Yes. Let us know, everybody. Here we go. And then we say, so someone says, Facebook user, what a great panel today. Yes. And let me just remind you, if you're watching from the Facebook groups, please give StreamYard permission to show your name and profile pics, so I'll be able to credit you when you comment or ask questions. You'll see the StreamYard.com/Facebook link. Just give that a click, give permissions, and it'll show your name and profile. And speaking of StreamYard, just wanted to give a little shout out to StreamYard, the multi-streaming app, which enables me to stream to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitch if I was on Twitch. So here's a little intro to StreamYard. Thanks, StreamYard. Wrong one. Too many things going on. Thank you, StreamYard. Okay, so people coming in. So says hi, Maria. Kim. Let us know where everyone is watching from. And I guess we should get started. So, Michael, want to introduce yourself?
Right. Hello, everyone. Good day to you all. Before we begin, I would like to express my gratitude to Andrew and Jack for inviting me to do this interview. I hope that today's discussion will bring something special to everyone. So I'm going to do a little brief description of my photo background. I'm going to try to go through this quickly so that we can go on to the slides.
Great.
But when I was finishing my bachelor's degree in forestry, I was able to get into some art and philosophy classes. And these were my introduction into these areas of art, and I found them much in alignment with my inner self. So after this, in 1975, I picked up a couple of used 35 millimeter cameras and then a 4x5 view camera. I had learned the basic composition skills in my art classes and design classes, and then I started studying on my own, studying the masters of photography, everyone from Weston and Stieglitz to Arbus and Winogrand. Then I began traveling around the Four Corners area, both for my forestry work and for my photographic pursuits. I purchased my first digital camera for a trip to central Mexico in 2009. So I think this is a good place to begin looking at the images.
Okay.
And just an overall picture of what you're about to see is there's there are 3 series of images that I've put into this slideshow. This is the first one. It's called Mexican Icons. And these photographs were shot between 2009 and 2019. So the first 3 images that you're going to see here, this first one is called The Blessing of the Water. It says Mexico City. This is inside the Metropolitan Cathedral, which is at the north end of the Zocalo. And this cathedral is built on top of the Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan.
Cool.
It's called the Templo Mayor. So next to the cathedral is a museum that's all about Tenochtitlan and the archaeological findings there. So these are some of my first images with my first digital camera. So let's thanks, Kim. Let's take a look at this image. And oh yeah, I have a cursor. Great. So you're in this holy church, and you're looking into, this is one of the side altars. There's like 12 side altars in this Catholic church. So I'm brand new to this setting, and I look into this altar and I see these stacks of bottled water. I don't know if you can make them out here, but these are stacks of bottled water. And I thought, that is so ironic. It looks like the Christ is blessing this water, making it holy water. What I did here, you'll notice that the photograph, the colors are all muted, and I have an overlay on it. And that's to offer to the viewer some of the feeling about the history, because this is a 16th century cathedral. So we're going back to the 1500s. And as you can imagine, things were very different then. And these side altars, they're kind of dark and moody, if you will. So I lowered the colors on this to give it some of that feeling. Okay, I'm going to go on to the next slide here.
Great.
Okay, this slide is called The Temptation of Christ, and in this image, you can see that the Christ is blindfolded here. And I found that very interesting. I had not seen this kind of setup or presentation before. Also, if you look carefully, you can see there's a rope that binds his wrists. But then after I saw that, I saw this very strange thing, that there is this glass of water right here sitting in front of him. And that really struck me, to me, personally, to me, that was like the temptation, the temptation to satisfy your thirst, right? But also the fact that he's up on a pedestal, as though he's being made an example here for us. And then when I let my eye go around the room, I noticed this empty space with these pegs coming out of the wall. So there's this emptiness, right? And this reminded me of a book that I read called Stealing the Mona Lisa, where in 1911, one of the Italian carpenters who worked in the museum walked out of the museum with the Mona Lisa under his painter's jacket. And
sounds like it was pretty easy to do, huh?
Yes, it was very easy.
In the Louvre in Paris.
In the Louvre, yeah. he hid in a broom closet, waited for people to leave, came out with his painter's coat on, and just the Mona Lisa is a very small painting on a wooden panel, so he just slipped it under his jacket because he thought it belonged in Italy, not in France. But anyway, the whole issue of the book, which was written by Darian Leader, who is a very famous British psychologist, is that after the Mona Lisa was stolen, people were coming by the millions to the Louvre to see this empty space. The space where the Mona Lisa had been hanging. It was empty now. And so he found this really curious. Why would people come to the museum to see this empty space? It's because, in part because our minds are just fascinated that there was something there and now it's gone. What was it? Right. And 1911, August 1911, was one of the most important dates in art because that's when the Mona Lisa actually became famous. It got so much attention in the press that it made its way to not just newspapers and magazines, but also onto postcards, right? And then reproductions. And that's how the Mona Lisa became famous with the public.
So the moral of the story is, Jack, you need to have someone steal some of your artwork in the next show you're in, and then you'll go viral, and the next time your work goes up, then we'll buy it. Right?
Well, there is something to be said for the outlaw artist.
Right.
Outlaw art is a bit, Banksy's pioneered it, really, hasn't he?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love these textured, in this empty space, textured shadows. Is it a staircase?
No, I think it's, the light comes in from high above in the cathedral. So I think it's just light coming down.
Really
through,
cool.
Through windows.
Yeah.
And each of these side altars can be locked up. They have, like a wrought iron partition there that they can lock up. So, all right, on to the next slide here. Now, my wife may be able to give some additional details because she's actually from the Mexican culture. She was actually born just south of Mexico City. But this is called the Lord of the Cacao Bean, right? That's not actually my label. That's the actual label for this piece of iconography. We're still in the Metropolitan Cathedral here, but what you can see is a mix of both Catholicism and indigenous beliefs, because this is actually a branch from the cacao plant right here in his hand. Another thing you'll notice is the unusual shape to the crown is actually an echo of the cross here. So, and a very unusual stance, if you will. You don't typically see the Christ sitting. He's either standing or on the crucifix. So I thought this was
a very good point. Yeah, you rarely see that.
So this is Mexico, and one of the things I'm trying to say is that in Mexico, the icons are very bold. These aren't things that you would see in the U.S. in a Catholic church. You would never see this kind of portrayal, right? With all the blood and and the sadness and etc. And by the way, my wife actually had the opportunity to go down below the cathedral and see the original Aztec foundation that's still below the church with the Aztec carvings.
Wow.
So the Spanish repurposed, when they tore down the Aztec temples, they just reused the stones, right? There was a ready supply of stones to build your cathedral, build your presidential palace, or whatever building that you might be engaged in. Here were all these ready-made stones from the Aztecs. So you're actually seeing a repurposed Aztec building when you look at these Spanish buildings.
Cool.
Okay, so the Diorama of Christ, was also shot in Mexico City, but it's not in the Metropolitan Cathedral. This is in one of the surrounding churches. So continuing with the image of Christ here and representation, which I think is very unusual or highly unusual. Seeing these presentations are very striking for me. Here the Christ is laid out as though he's in a glass coffin, right? And it's lighted for viewing. So
Nice.
okay, so after a couple of trips into central Mexico, I had the chance to read a book called Mexico's Fortress Missions. I'm going to hold it up for everybody here, by Rick Perry. Rick Perry lives in Santa Barbara, so I'm very jealous of him. But I'm very happy that he wrote this book. What's interesting about it is there are no pictures. They're all drawings. So I said, well, let's get down there with a camera and see these. And my wife supported me. And on our third trip to central Mexico, we made this the focus of our trip. So my poor children were drug through central Mexico to all these 16th century fortress missions, which they had little or no interest in. So I have to thank my family for putting up with me. Fortunately, my wife loves her culture and loves seeing these treasures. So oftentimes we would come to one of the missions and it would be locked, and she would run down the street and find the priest for me, and they would unlock the mission, and I would go in and have it to myself. Now on this day, this is in a place, a little town called Huaquechula, which is south of Mexico City. It's about an hour south of Mexico City. This church was being used. A lot of these 16th century churches are still in use, but you can see here in this, in this photograph a couple things. This window-shaped mural, right? So there's a painting, but in front of it is an actual statuary or icon of the Christ and the crucifixion. And then you can see here we have in black a priest and the Mother Mary in mourning. But also, obviously, there's this yellow veil coming down. And I believe on that day there was some kind of high school graduation ceremony going on. And this is a point for any artist or particularly photographers, is that when you walk into a space, even a space that you've checked out beforehand, you may find other people in there crowding into your frame. And this is actually an opportunity. This is what I've learned over the decades of working with cameras. And so I just took the opportunity to include some of that in my frame. So, we have the holy people here, and then this veil coming down, and you can see flowers here. Okay. This is also in a small town at one of the 16th century missions. And this was another one of those photographic challenges, because this statuary of the Christ and the donkey are actually in a glass box. And if you've ever tried to photograph things that are behind glass, you know right away that every light that's in the room is going to show up in the glass. So I decided what I wanted to do was try to incorporate the reflection of the room into the image of the Christ as well. And so you can see this part and this wall and this wall, those are reflections in the glass. And I thought, yeah, this is really what I want. When I walked into the room, I thought, oh God, here is this amazing piece of Spanish history, and I'm not going to be able to get a good photograph of it because it's placed in this glass display. And then I said, no, use that as an opportunity to make the image even greater. And that's what I feel like I've done here. So, this is a representation of the Christ riding the donkey into Jerusalem.
The room looks like it's made of gold.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the point that I'm making here, is that everything is glowing and seems to be like gold.
Nice.
Thank you. Okay, so I showed you the Fortress Missions book, but I also found a second book that I read and used to do some
And
of my...
Michael?
Yes.
Travis says beautiful and compelling work.
Oh, thank you, Travis.
Kim says amazing.
Thanks, Kim.
And Dallas earlier had said beautiful work.
Thank you, Dallas. And hopefully we'll see more work in addition to this slide presentation. But this is the second book, Missions of Northern Sonora. So that's where we're going now. This is from a mission in Ures. It says San Ignacio, but it should say Ures. Got my title off there. And so you can see again this very bold presentation with this sword being thrust through the heart of the Mother Mary in front of her crucified son. So these are not statues or icons that you can find in Catholic churches in the United States. So very striking. This last image of the Mexican icons series is, well, for lack of a better explanation, it's the head of the Christ in a wooden box with a glass window. Now, I think in Mexico, and maybe beyond, there is a certain kind of ceremony or ritual to this. But this was in a very small church north of Hermosillo, the capital of Sonora, in a little town called San Ignacio. And this was one of Father Quino's, who was a Jesuit priest. This was one of his first missions in the Upper Alta, the Spanish called it, which is now called the state of Sonora. Okay. So now we're going to move on to the second series. This series is called Saguaro Skins. And this is a series that I'm still shooting, that I also started in 2009, the same time that I started the Mexican Icon series. And this series actually was instigated by a painting that I saw first when I was in college. And I told you I took a couple of courses in art and design. And it's called, I didn't mark my page here. Got to check everything twice. It's called, here it is, Vision After the Sermon. Let's get it lined up here.
Gauguin. Is that Gauguin?
This is Paul Gauguin.
Yeah.
Now, what I want you to notice is in this painting, the background is red. And what Paul Gauguin was doing was he was telling you that that area behind the tree where the angel is wrestling with Job is another world. It's a separate world. And the way he signaled you to understand that was he used the complementary color of green, which is red. So he's doing a 180 or transposing that part of the painting, that part of the landscape into a separate world, a spiritual world. And so the people, the ladies and the priest here in the painting, they are rural people from northern France, the Bretons, and they have just come out of a church sermon, and they are having this vision, right? Because they've heard the sermon, and now their eyes are seeing a different world, right? And we've all had this in our lives where we have transcended our old world and begin to see the world with new eyes. So I took that into the desert and I transposed the green skin of the saguaro into red to tell my viewers that, look, we're in a different world here, a world that's going to take contemplation, time to really digest and understand. So in this image, you can see that I've not only done the complementary color with this bold red, but I have these very bold fingers reaching down. These are scars on the skin of the saguaro. And then you can see that, you have two very dramatic colors here, this dark black and this crimson red. But you also have these black soldiers in lines on both sides. And down from the black fingers, it's almost like blood is coming down from those fingers.
Nice.
Very
Thank you.
painterly feel to this work too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to see quite a bit of that in this series because we're abstracting. We're getting very close to the saguaro.
Right. The thing that I like about this series so much is that in one way, it's like an abstract painting. And at the same time, it's extreme detail of something that's real, that was really there. And I love the juxtaposition of those two worlds coming together. So it's really nice to kind of dip in and out. It's like 1 minute it's abstract, next minute
Yeah.
it's extremely hyper real.
It can be whatever you want it to be for the viewer. Brilliant.
Thank you both, and thank you, Andrew, for making that point, because in making these images, and you'll see a case in point later on, but I could make them completely abstract, right? But I always try to maintain some details, like this is the nodule for the spines here, right? So that there's, like Andrew said, there's something recognizable in there. So just like Andrew said, you're going back and forth between these two worlds, the world of the real and the world of the imagined, right? So, so thank you, Maria. Yeah,
I have to agree with Maria there too. I haven't seen photography like this before.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has this type of vision. It's nice.
Yeah.
thank you. And thanks to my cameras. I like to tease my Facebook friends, and I often tell them, especially when I'm putting up something like a sunset, I'll tell them that, yeah, I have this button on my camera, and underneath it says perfect picture. And I said, when I get in trouble, I just push that button.
And then all the purists come out arguing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a black box, right? The things that I see, the things that go on in my head, the things that happen with the camera and Photoshop, the viewer is not privileged to that. So it's a bit of a black box. And I try to simplify it by just saying I have this button, the perfect photo button. So here you can see the descending black dagger, right? And the ascending holy white dagger, right? And from the tips of the black dagger, the blood is flowing, and here are the rows of black soldiers again. And when people, I would say that when people look at these images, they should have any feeling they want. An artist friend of mine here in Tucson, after he looked at a series of these, he said, okay, enough of that blood red. When are you going to use another color? Right? I guess the connection to blood was just a little stronger in his mind, and was something that he kind of wanted to get away from after a while. So I always say that the viewer completes the picture, right? Because even if you're a master like Da Vinci, you don't have a complete picture of the picture. There's still someone that adds to your image with their own personal psyche and experiences, or subconscious, as Jack likes to say.
Or unconscious, even unconscious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Something that just bubbles up out of you that no one else has. You have it, right? So that's the good and evil photo there. Now, in this image, you get the full contrast between the red and the green. And this is one image, even though it looks like there's a possibility that right down the middle, I've split this, but this is one image. And I like this partially because of that contrast between the crimson red and the natural green. So on the left, you're getting a lot of the natural part of the image being illustrated with the green color, the brown color, the black. And then the feeling for me is with this great separating line here is the two worlds, the world of nature and the world of imagination, right? The world of creation, creativity. So that's partially why this photograph is kind of special to me.
It looks like there's some faces as well in the little details, especially to the left. I can see a face.
Right.
Really cool.
You know, there's going to be an image here very soon. Let me just scroll down over here. Yeah, it's about 4 images down, but you're going to see an example where I purposely get into that. In these images, to be frank with you, I don't look for faces. I typically don't see them. I just know that viewers, as they go through images like this, these abstractions, if you will, that they're going to see those things. But my focus is really on the details that I just walked through. Okay, so again with the red background, but in this case, in this dramatic red skin world, we have this white vertical areas that resemble a spinal column, you know, with the spinal column and the ribs going out horizontally. So this is a highly abstracted images. You might compare it to one of the color abstract artists. I don't know, Rothko or somebody.
Right. Nice.
This is this again the skin of a saguaro, and the skin on a saguaro is typically laid out in accordion pleats, and that's a survival mechanism. It allows the saguaro to expand during the monsoons and pick up more water that it stores in its body for long drought periods. So that's an expansion survival technique of the saguaro. This image is a very high contrast fantasy image, and it's a very tight composition, right? And it leans towards a paintbrush or painterly rendition, and kind of loses some of that touch with reality. I just call it eye candy from the red world.
Certainly is eye candy.
Oh.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Can I ask, Michael, did you photograph these with a macro lens?
No, I shoot all of my photos, and I'm not ashamed of this, but I shoot all of my photos on highly flexible, transportable, small Canon cameras. And they all have zoom lenses, so they're 28 to 140 millimeter lenses.
Cool.
And that's how I work. I tried, and this is kind of important, but I'll make it quick. That I was reading that there's this process called check disk, where you can actually make an SD card that rewrites the application or formatting in the camera. So I had a friend that I worked with who was a code writer that helped me put this disk together so that the process that I use in the camera could become fully manual, instead of a more automatic, in the sense that it controls the f-stop and the shutter speed. So I wanted to get control of those so that I could make the image plane as clearly defined as I could, but we were not successful. So out there somewhere is someone, a technical person that knows how to do this check disk procedure on an SD card. And if they ever come forward, I will love them the rest of my life. Okay. So here again, you have those accordion ribs or pleats in the saguaro skin. And on this day, I had a very bright light shining on the skin. And I remembered back to the point in time where I switched from Kodachrome to Fujichrome. And one of the things that Fujichrome does that Kodachrome did not do was it represented the color white in a fashion that I really, really like. So I got an opportunity here to get into that color white, which I think is one of the hardest or most difficult colors to represent in an image. And so I just really like the high contrast here with the bright white color. It's a kind of haunting and ghost-like there in the red world of the saguaro.
I was going to say with the color and the texture, this contrast. These would look great on, like, say, metal prints.
Yeah,
right.
Aluminium prints,
Yeah.
superb. Do you know what the virtues of the aluminium print? Because I've gone for fine art Gishley prints framed with art glass, and you can still kind of see a bit of a reflection. But with the aluminium print, there is no reflection whatsoever. For my latest exhibition, I did all 4 pieces on aluminium, and I'm just being so impressed. I think I'm not going to go back now. That's going to be my my main go-to form of display and printing.
Nice.
Thank you. I'm going to hurry along here because I'm watching the clock. So when you go through a series, it's important to explore the borders or to get into alternate images. So here, I've totally left the red world and gone into black and white or monochrome. Again, I used high contrast here to bring out the details, but you can see the 2 ascending daggers and the 1 descending dagger, and you can see that in this descending dagger, it's brought death to the needles. That here you can see a live one below it.
And
So
I was going to say, with this duotone color, this reminds me of like an etching, like printmaking.
yeah, something that I want to explore in the future, because when I went through college, I had a close friend who was an intaglio major.
Mm-hmm.
And through the years, I've gone to places like San Francisco and seen full shows on intaglio, and I just love it. It's just so beautiful. So if I can incorporate some of it, I've been thinking about getting a press so that when I make a print, I can get my hand here. I can use the press to make an indentation around the image to make it resemble a lithograph or an intaglio.
Excellent.
Okay, so here I've taken off all the chains, right? Andy talked about keeping pieces from both the real world and the abstract world. So I decided that I wanted to make something very different and I wanted it to look not so much like the other images, but to give it this plastic flow.
So I was going to say this one now looks like a silk screen with the edges that you have around it.
Right, right. So I have an application called Nick where I can doctor or treat the edges of images.
Cool.
And so you can see on the left here, things have just gone into like basic colors without details, right? And so you have the two branches here, the edge is eroding, the whole image is coming apart. A black hole has opened up in the center and left this gaping hole, you know. Okay, now to
I see
the
faces.
yeah to the anthropomorphism here. Before I had shot this photograph, I had done a photograph called Pick Your Mouth. It's kind of a play on words with Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, where they pick their noses. But you can see there are mouth-like shapes here, here, and here. Obviously eyes, and then the shape of a head. One of the things that interested me about this shape was that with the color and the face, it began to represent an African mask to me. And we all know that Picasso picked up on African art and started incorporating it in his work. And I just felt that there were enough details, like you could see this as hair coming down on the right side here. But I just thought there were enough details and the right kind of color that I wanted to capture this.
And Kim says, love the face.
Yeah. People look for, what is human in images. Not a lot of humanity here. This is the result of falling black saguaro sap. I don't know if it is ever termed as sap, but that's the closest word I can come up for. So it starts obscuring both worlds. On the right, it starts to, the evil presence or this black rain starts to cover up the red and green worlds. So it's in a sense in opposition to these worlds. So what is the end of a beautiful, colorful world? Okay. I need to admit straight off that I put this image in the slideshow for Jack, based on what I've seen in his work and how he responded to Tyrone Williams' artworks. So this is like the Red World's upholstery or the back of a toreador's bullfighting jacket. That's just how I personally see it.
Cool.
Shoulders here, right? Midsection of the back and slimming down. That is
the textures and the 3D element of the work are quite striking.
Yeah.
Look,
and I really like this white area up here to give it contrast to the red.
Yeah.
It's quite painterly, that's for sure. It has.
Yeah, I can definitely see this series as in a gallery, printed big.
Right.
Yeah, I can just see the gallery booklet now. The booklet would be something to behold.
Yeah,
nice.
And I even thought of a poster where you would lay out the individual images in rows, right?
Yeah.
So small images, just like little windows.
Yeah.
I think that would be very striking if people saw all those images in one
Yeah,
snapshot.
this is definitely a series of work that becomes cohesive when viewed together.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very powerful as a
Right.
series, as a
Because
whole series.
these are all from the same plant, the saguaro, right? But look how varied they are. Thank you, sweetheart.
Wow. This is
Okay.
blowing me. This is blowing me away, Michael. Absolutely brilliant and breathtaking work.
Oh, thank you. This particular piece, which is the final image of the Saguaro Skins, represents something for me that's both subtle and difficult to express at the same time. This image is less about the red world dominating the green world, or eclipsing it. It somehow, I hate to use these words and names, but I don't know how to get at it. This image is very special to me because of what's in the color. It represents the color of Gauguin and Van Gogh, but it also represents the time period of these artists. When we have color in culture or society, it comes in packets. And I remember when they made this little animated film called Robots with Robin Williams. The first thing I noticed was, holy crap, look at the colors they're using. They were using colors from the late 40s, early 50s. And, so that's a color from industry, right? But these colors really represent that time period with Gauguin and Van Gogh for me. And, when I look at it, it's like, okay, I'm looking at a Van Gogh. I know what that sounds like to people. It's like I'm heightening my image by using a internationally famous name, but that's really what it is to me. Okay, so we're now into the series called Spirits of the Desert Past. And the first thing I need to say is that the arrangement of words in this titling in this series is meant to be suggestive. I've used the word past, P-A-S-S-E-D, versus past, P-A-S-T. So it gives the viewer a hint to the experience that has happened now, in the now with the past, or passing of these people who came before us. And passing could also mean passing before the artist's eyes in the field of the desert. Okay. So this series was provoked by my reading in the works of Carlos Castaneda. There we go. Very, very powerful writer. Doesn't matter if you believe anything that he says. His writing, his use of words is just extremely gifted. And many of these words are obviously words coming from the sorcerer, the main character in his books, Don Juan. So in these books, with a willingness of suspension of disbelief, you can start understanding this one separate world that's been the focus for thousands of years for these Toltec sorcerers, right? Now, Don Juan obviously wasn't a Toltec, he was a Yaki Indian. But the things that he was able to do were extraordinary. So let's get into the first image here. This is a blind shaman reanimated upon the grotesque shape of an enduring ironwood tree, right, which is indigenous to the desert here. The language of this world, meaning the separate world, is a strange language that matches the strangeness of this world, where a shaman goes and comes back to this world with a message that he's learned to understand. So you can see this very unusual language hanging in the air of this world. So this image is meant to transport you. This is not this world. You know, there's no sense in saying, "Oh yeah, I think I see a Palo Verde tree back here." That's kind of nonsensical because it's a different world. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So in the presence of this imposing saguaro with these massive limbs that go on for many feet, a shaman has decided to manifest himself. Okay. Bear with me for just a second. All right. Okay. So here in this image, you can see the outline of a shaman with a drum on his left hand and his native dress. And in his right hand, he's holding these staffs. And also in silhouette fashion is this very contorted ironwood tree. So he has risen up through the energy of the earth into this non-living ironwood tree and has presented himself. One of the things I really liked in this composite was this desert grass, which gives like a flow of energy, if you will. It's energetic, and in this world, energy is something to be sensed and used. Okay, hang on a second here. Okay. This is a place of ceremony. You can see the shaman standing here in this ceremonial space, which I captured on the literal side. This is a very, very large concrete pad for a ranching water tank. The tank's gone, and so there's just the concrete left. So this is out in the middle of nowhere in the desert, and I saw it as a place of ceremony. The shaman has come, and so his energy is now transporting himself to this separate world, and you can see that the sky is changing because it won't be the same sky in the world that he's going to. This is the Yaki deer dancer. You can, if you look closely, you can make out the deer's head here. And the Yaki deer dancer, well, this is a mimetic dance. He's taking on the persona of the deer, right? Who's the deer spirit is given to sustain the culture. Well, the Yaki believe that the universe is composed of overlapping yet distinct worlds and places. And they call this Aniam, these overlapping worlds. And each of these worlds has its own distinct qualities and forces. The Yaki relate deer dancing with 3 of these worlds. Since the deer emerges from an enchanted home into a wilderness world and dances in the flower world. So all these worlds can be accessed through this deer dance. Okay, little different image here with the snake charming shaman, the warrior, the ironwood tree, and behind it is a flower, right? So what's this all about? This is about the snake charmer taking the warrior into the flower world, and manifesting first in the ironwood tree that has passed. And this ironwood tree could represent polarizing axis mundi, the spiritual axis of the world. So here, the warrior will receive a special vision to assist him.
So this is a kind of, that last piece, a kind of quadruple exposure. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you. This striking photo representing a sort of teleporting, if you will, through the energy of the earth, and then this Aztec shaman appears in the deformed arm of this saguaro. So this is a saguaro skeleton, and the arm comes out and has been deformed into this flower-like shape. A reference back to the flower world. Okay, so we've moved from the Native American shamans to the Aztec shamans, and here we are in the Aztec world. The Aztecs and their cultural ideas greatly influence the indigenous people to the north, meaning the southwest of the United States. When they sort of left their shadows of their culture in this desert, when the Aztecs took prisoners of war, they sacrificed them to the sun, and then their skulls that you can make out here, those skulls were hung on racks to illustrate their strength, the strength of their culture and their warriors.
Does that apply to tribes such as the Apache and the Navajo in the southeastern?
Well, the Apache and Navajo were nomadic, and their appearance in the Southwest is much later than, say, the Hohokam or the Sinagua or the Anasazi, who are now called the New Pueblans, the Mogollons. The older cultures were the cultures that were influenced by the Aztecs, not so much the newer, the Tonoatam, the different Apache tribes, the Hopi, the Navajo.
They were more transient, nomadic marauders kind of thing.
Well, the Apaches and the Navajo were.
Yeah.
The Hopi and the Tonoatam and the river tribes, Colorado River tribes, they were very sedentary, settled around farming and hunting and gathering in that locale. So also to the desert came the Spanish with Catholicism, right? So saints abounded in this world of the Catholic Spanish New World of Spain. And these icons traveled to Visitas and also adorned their missions that they built here in the Southwest and in Mexico.
Nice.
One of the things I like about this composition, it's obviously two photos, right? Is that when you look at the flower, this is one of those lucky occurrences in photography. And luck is, I have to tell everyone, luck is one of my favorite tools. I just love it. So this is a kind of a lucky trompe l'oeil, where it looks like the flower is actually coming out of the perimeter of the saguaro. So I just love that. It really creates this illusion of depth between this figure and the flower that's poking out of the saguaro.
Nice.
This demonic image, I made this, but sometimes when I look at it, it really kind of freaks me out.
Makes David Lynch look like child's play.
I wish he had tuned in today. But anyway, so you've got these dual saguaro heads back here on arms, and then the dual arms up here, and then this crowned arm with the flowers and the fruits, and then obviously this face. So after the Spanish world came the pioneers and their families. And this face is actually a famous face in the Southwest. This is the face of Olive Oakman. She was a 13-year-old in a Mormon family that was crossing Arizona when the Mojave Apaches killed her family and captured her and her younger sister and took them as slaves into the Apache world. So her younger sister died, but she survived. And 4 years later, she was rescued by one of her brothers that survived the attack. So she returned to this world a very different person. And it's very hard to see, but when the Mojave Apaches captured her, they tattooed her lip and jaw in a blue tattoo. So she has this very striking appearance. Also, people that came to the Southwest were Chinese immigrants. And the Chinese, pretty much in work gangs built our railroads here in the Southwest and other places in the West. And then they transcended after the railroads were built. They had to have other occupations. They became gardeners and grocers. So this just represents them and their energy here in this unusual golden dandelion ball here. And along, I'm sorry. One of the images got left out. That's okay. it was a photograph of a miner, just to show that the miners
It's
came
very,
in.
very cinematic image. It looks like it's should be from a John Ford Western or something. Really cool.
This image is a total ripoff. This image is really shameful. The first image with the mountains and the empty clotheslines is from a historic ranch called the Aguirre Ranch. It was a Spanish land grant here in Arizona. And it still remains a ranch. It's not the Aguirre Ranch anymore. I don't know the owner of the ranch. But I took this picture of the clotheslines and the mountains and the empty desert. And then I overlaid on top of it, this is the very shameful part. I overlaid a famous painting by Wyeth. So there you get the curtains, the blind, the window, to represent this world, this lonely world of ranchers who are in the middle of nowhere, right? And their neighbors are the mountains, right?
But
And
you've only used the painting as a kind of to add to the collage. So I wouldn't say it's a rip-off. You're just using a piece of collage with your own work to create something new.
thank
It looks
you.
really cool.
So here you can get that feeling of being in that ranch family, looking out your window, and this is your neighborhood. This is what you feel when you look out and see your world. So the ranching world. And this is the final image. It's a total ripoff as well. It's I didn't incorporate a piece from Castaneda's work, but the imagery of the floating shamans is very identifiable with Castaneda's work. So you see three shamans. They're identical shamans, except for the one that's grounded to the earth. He's grounded himself in a saguaro skeleton, right? And I relate their power to the sacred mountain behind them. And this is the field of their manifestation.
I love this image. It's so hallucinogenic. What's the
Yeah.
word? Hallucinatory? Hallucinatory, is it?
Yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
really cool.
And of course, saying that, I think it makes sense to tell people again that, I don't use drugs. I've never used drugs. I'm not really that interested in using drugs, but, I'm not moralistic. If people use drugs, I don't disdain them or condemn them.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you, Michael. But then some trippy art is just really cool. It looks like if I was in a band, I'd want this as my LP cover. Iconic.
Yeah. Maybe if you join the band, All Them Witches, you can get them to use this as your. I don't know what your particular instrument is, but once
they're
you
a great
get
band. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned this kind of druggy influence, because I'm a non-drug person myself, and I know that Andrew is as well. But if you look at our works, they're quite trippy. So I guess it's kind of unconscious imaginings coming out with all of us, all three of us, really.
Right. So, so I know we're over at how much time have we been here? Since 11. So we're an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's been great. Been great.
So any concluding questions, comments.
Questions, comments.
I didn't get
One question
question.
from me, Michael, quickly.
Okay.
I noticed in quite a lot of the series and the images, very selective use of blur, which I liked. So the attention was drawn to the image with little pieces of blur that kind of draw you in to the detail parts. And I thought that was very subtle and very cool.
Well, it serves two purposes, and the purpose that you mentioned. When you create a composition, obviously you want the viewer to look at certain things. So using techniques like blur, color, lines, leading lines, size, scale, there are all these things that you can use like the blur to create this focus point. But also with the blur, I'm indicating to the viewer that in some cases, we've left this reality, and we're now looking at a different world. And it's hard for people to get into that, let alone accept it. It's hard for people to realize that the human psyche creates these different worlds, or access to these different worlds. And this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. For instance, I've read an article that said that Native American shamans would look for these caves because in the caves, the magnetic alignment that was locked up in the rocks was different. And they would use that as an energy source to allow them to access this different reality that native indigenous people were doing as shamans. So, and I use it in this world because inside of our world, there are different realities. There's a reality in London, there's a reality in LA, and there's a reality here. And when I travel and I go to cities, or even just places, towns or fields, there is a distinct and very different energy there that I immediately become aware of. It's very apparent. So even within our own world, not going to another world, if you go into Africa and you visit an African tribe, your world is going to change immediately, right? The setting, the landscape, right down to foods, how you sleep, what you do during the day. So, people experiment with drugs, and I experiment with places and energy, and what those energies can do to me. And then I try to bring some of that back to the images I'm making. I've often said that if someone were following with me with a video camera while I'm making or photographing works, that would be the most embarrassing piece of video that you've ever seen, because the process I use is emptying myself, is getting super, super still inside and just letting what's in front of me come to me. So how many thousands of people have photographed saguaros? I'll just use that as an example. And I have to say that there's few, if any, people that have seen saguaros like I've seen them. And that's primarily because when I go there, I just empty myself and let whatever is in front of me speak. So here's a couple of quotes from Joseph Campbell. When beauty becomes manifest, the human animal becomes the human being. And then he says, the human being is a poet. He also said on personal mythology, that was one of his mainstays in his writings and his presentations. He said, I don't use them to defend myself or prove my beliefs in life. I make them because I find them beautiful. He once was asked, well, what does this photograph mean? And he said, well, what does a pyramid mean? You know, it's like you have to go to it and be with it to sort of have the meaning of it.
Nice. Yeah, it's great. So once again, any questions and comments? I know that, let's see. Maria says that Michael's art helps my soul travel and at the same time look inside my soul without relying on words.
Very good.
I was going to say, you know, for me and probably for all of us, I think the process of creating art is like the drug. So it's not like you need a drug. It's getting into almost the trance of creating. That's the drug. And I like the idea or the reality of you go into it, you are completely absorbed by it, you create something, and it might be trance-like, but then you can get back to reality or something that's needy or necessary without any kind of distortion that you get from taking a drug, you know. So
Right.
I can create my art and then I can go and, like, you know, go pay a bill or go grocery shopping, you know. I mean, I don't have to
Right.
be I don't have to be sloppy afterwards because of,
Yeah.
There's a second element that I would like to add to that. I thought that was a great description, Andrew. The second element that I would add to that is something I started writing a book about 10, 15 years ago called The Transcendence of Image Making. And what that is about what happens inside the individual, right? And I'll give some just very concrete sorts of things. When I went into Mexico, I had never read the history of Mexico. And once I got there and I was totally taken by the country and the culture and the history, I sat down and read a book, 400-page book on Mexican history. And what that did was it filled in all those gaps that you have when you actually stand in front of something. Now you know why it's there, right? But what this does is the transcendence of image making is the image, the purpose in making the image starts to drive the individual, and they start collecting knowledge and experience. And so it changes the individual. You know, one of the oldest statements about a photograph is that it's a reflection of the photographer, right? So a person who picks up a camera, what they're doing is they're asking themselves to focus. Because to take a picture of something means you have to look at it. And I used to play this game with my wife. She's online here, so she can make a comment. But we used to drive into Mexico to see her family in Hermosillo. And my wife is a great driver, so she's driving on this particular day. And I say, Mari, do you see that photograph? And she said, what? yeah. I said, do you see the photograph? And she said, where? And I said, over there on the right. You see the man with the donkey? And she said, oh, yeah. I said, is that a photograph? And she said, yeah, that's a photograph. I said, oh, good. I said, where are the edges of your photograph? What do you mean? I said, well, when you make a photograph, you have to see where the edges of it are. I said, are you going to include the sky? How about that old car on the left? What? You're the director. The director says what's going to be in the frame and what's not. So where are the edges of your photograph? So I called this windshield photography. And it's an exercise about focusing. And focusing is meditation, right? I've never had to take a class in meditation because I'm a natural meditator. You know, with everything that comes to me, whether it's music or art or literature, it creates a meditative state for me. You know, one day somebody caught me singing into the sound hole of my guitar. He said, what the heck are you doing? I said, listen to the strings vibrate when I hit a certain note. And so I realized that I was a natural meditator, that when things come to me, you know, it creates a situation of meditation. So when I heard the famous Buddhist sermon on the flower, I mean, immediately I got it, because I just started laughing because I could just see the Buddha sitting there with this single flower. And for me, the flower was smiling, which made the Buddha smile, which made him think. And then you just put a thought bubble above his head. But yeah, with the transcendence of image making, now that we have digital cameras, it's so easy for people to step into this world of creating images. You get an immediate image back. You say, good, bad, I want to change it. I want to reframe it. I want to do this. And then that process leads you to places, and you begin to transcend old ways of looking at the world, and you start looking at new ways, like Magritte, who said, this is not a pipe. And he was basically going back to, maybe Schopenhauer, the German philosopher Schopenhauer. You know, the word is not the object, right? And a painting of it is not the object, right? So in your mind, you begin to transcend, you know, some of the cultural pinnings of the reality of the world, and you get to your own reality of the world.
Great.
So with
Thank
that, I would just say, unless you want to hear the story about the Prado, we would go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you, Michael. It's really great to see
Thanks
all
so
the
much,
different.
Michael.
Yeah, great
Oh,
work.
and Andrew, myself and Michael talked about the possibility further down the line of a part 2 for some more of Michael's work, and
Sure,
that would be pretty
absolutely.
cool.
As well as you know, like a group of us discussing a certain theme about art too. I think would be great.
That'd be great.
So thank you so much, Michael. It's fantastic, excellent work, and thank you so much, Jack. And so wanted to let everyone know where you can find Michael, Jack, and me online as well. So first is a shout out to the Influx Gallery. So you can find the Influx Gallery at influxgallery.com artist, and you'll see Michael, Jack, and me. A great artist there. Fantastic. Online and in London. Michael is at the Influx Gallery at influxgallery.com/Michael Benz. You can find Michael on Instagram at instagram.com, Michael K. Benz. And you can search for Michael on Facebook as MK Benz. The link was a bit long, but MK Benz is easily searchable. There. You can find Jack online at savagedart.com. Cool. And Jack on Instagram at instagram.com, JackSavage_photo. And then you can find me at the Influx Gallery at influxgallery.com, Andrew-Kavanagh. And then on Instagram at Digital Artist Drew, Instagram.com, Digital Artist Drew. And for those who are watching, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Digital Art Drew, where we have these various lives related to the Influx Gallery, Photoshop and photography focused, and Adobe Express focused. So that's Digital Art Drew on YouTube. Please subscribe. Please watch. Give me some watch hours, people. But yeah, youtube.com, Digital Art Drew. Thank you. And please do consider joining my digital art group on Facebook. So facebook.com/groups, the Digital Art Group, where Jack is also an admin. So please come and join us. And then we have some parting comments. So let's see. Maria says, thank you for sharing Michael's art with the world. Yeah, it was really great. Christina says, enjoyed Michael's insight of his thinking. Very intriguing. Yes, Christina Harris, good to see you here. And Jeff says, thank you so much, Christina. Andrew and everyone, for letting us experience your art and vision.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, as always, I will be posting the link to recording in the Facebook groups and sharing it with Michael and Jack so they can share it as well. And it will be up on that YouTube channel. So it'll be there for you to watch again and again. So thank you so much, Michael. It was really great. And thank you, Jack.
Andrew.
Thanks so much, Michael. Cheers, Andrew.
And I think we should now start calling Jack London Savage.
That's my 1960s gangster name.
That's right.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, everybody.